And now we have Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon, which was released a year after Spyro 2 in 2000, which is pretty convenient since that year was literally the Year of the Dragon in the Chinese calendar. Now at this point in Spyro's life, he's on top of the world and took over Crash as basically the mascot for the PlayStation. And if you saw my review of Spyro 2, you know I hold that game in high regards. But this one is considered the best in the trilogy, and rightfully so. It added a lot to the formula established in the prequel. So let's start up and see what makes this game so special by many people. Just like the last two, the story begins in the world of dragons. Well, you're not going to say it this time? Alright, fine. An evil plot unfolds. This mysterious bunny creature and some minions known as Rhinox crash the area while the dragons and Hunter are sleeping, and steal all the dragon eggs. They do manage to wake the dragons up by accident, but they're too big to stop them. That bunny, Bianca, works for the sorceress, who ships the dragon eggs off around the different lands. And the only ones who can fit through the holes Bianca came through are, conveniently enough, Spyro and Hunter, so it's up to them to get the eggs back, and then, say it with me one more time, the adventure begins. There really isn't much to say here about the story, it's what you'd expect, and they even throw in a little bit of romantic tension between Hunter and Bianca. Aww. As far as talking about the gameplay goes, I only really have to mention Spyro himself for just a bit, because it's pretty much exactly the same to how it was in Spyro 2. He plays exactly the same as he did there, and you're still doing missions of a wide variety, only this time to save dragon eggs, which all conveniently hatch when you save them and all come already pre-named. It's a nice touch. The core levels are still flaming and charging everything in your path and collecting gems, but the missions this time around are sectioned off from the main level and are accessed through these teleportation gates. So this gives the developers a good enough excuse to broaden their horizon of ideas to use for missions. Guiding balls of fire to a lava pool to create a sun, protecting a figure skating bear while she's performing from these jerks who are just dying to pound her to bits to get their hockey game going, playing hockey with cats. Again, playing hockey with cats. And then having an awesome air fight with twin dragons. Ridiculously cool. The game is just as varied as the last one was, but I can't go without mentioning that they actually added a skateboarding mechanic this time around, and it's pretty awesome. For a platformer, they nailed it pretty well, so nailing tricks is very satisfying, and doing point races with Hunter, so much fun. But really, that's all there is to say about playing as Spyro. It's only barely different to what it was in Spyro 2, but that also means it's just as fun as it was there. Now, as most of you know, that's not the major point of this game. I'd have to assume the guys at Insomniac were starting to go a little bit crazy, because there are 5 additional playable characters. Ooh boy. Now get ready, this is going to be a mouthful. In each of the game's 4 worlds, good ol', lovable ol', annoying old moneybags can be found keeping animals locked up in cages. These are the extra playable characters and you can free them at a price. First off is Sheila the kangaroo.
After all, I'm just doing my job.
Being a kangaroo, her main 2 abilities are a super high jump and using her feet of doom to knock enemies out. And that's really it. Aside from just controlling a bit slower than Spyro, she's definitely the most basic one of the bunch, which is totally not a bad thing. Then there's Sergeant Bird. This penguin of a war veteran's main abilities include flying. Flying? Isn't he supposed to be a penguin? Oh, whatever. You can also shoot rockets at enemies and pick stuff up like bombs and drop them wherever you wish. Now I like the idea of these levels, and they're not bad, but they do feel a bit slow and steering can be a bit too stiff. Still fun though. Thirdly, we have the end of all enjoyment as we know it, or as he's referred to in the game, Bentley the Yeti.
Now hold on. One more, perhaps? At least.
All he can do is smack stuff with his ice club and reflect shots by spinning said ice club. But obviously his main gimmick is being boring. Really? Does anyone like this guy or his levels? I think I've said enough. The final imprisoned playable character is Agent 9, the overly caffeinated monkey wearing armor and is equipped with a freaking laser gun and the ability to throw bombs.
Well, it's your lucky day. Check this out.
Let me repeat myself. Hyper monkey shooting lasers. I don't see anything wrong with this picture. And looking back, it almost seems like a work-in-progress Ratchet, which is both weird and kinda cool. There's even some first-person shooting segments with him, which is pretty bizarre in concept, but it's actually pretty cool if you can get used to the whole shooting without 2 analog sticks thing. And the final playable character isn't one imprisoned by moneybags, it's Sparks, Spyro's friendly neighborhood dragonfly. To access these levels, you just need to find a special Sparks signpost in each world. These levels are actually top-down shooters, so you just go from point A to point B, shoot everything in your path with special power-ups, and beat the boss at the end. These levels are actually pretty fun. It can be a bit annoying at times since you're restricted to only shooting in the direction you're facing, but that's not to say they're bad. These levels are actually worth completing aside from just the dragon eggs because they sort of power up how Sparks is with Spyro. Increasing the range that Sparks can pick up gems for you, being able to detect where nearby gems are, which was an ability given to you at the start of Spyro 2, but whatever, adding an extra hit point, and being able to warp to any level via the game's atlas. So there you go, 5 extra playable characters, with the 4 imprisoned ones having their own set of different missions. While that's definitely a big leap as far as characters go, the game still sticks to about 50% Spyro and 50% the rest. I'm just throwing 50-50 as an estimate, but Spyro's still the majority here. As mentioned before, we have 4 homeworlds this time around, based around different times of the day. Sunrise Spring, Midday Gardens, Evening Lake, and Midnight Mountain. Nothing really to say about them though, they're just what you would expect and they do their part. Each world has 4 main levels, a level solely based on one of the freed characters, a level based on Sparks, a speedway level, and a boss. Already mentioned the main levels, so as far as the speedways go, they all have 3 missions this time around. One being the same way they were laid out in the first 2 games, destroying targets in a time limit and whatnot. A new mission in doing lapped races and dealing with speed boosts and homing rockets. And then you find Hunter hidden to do a quirky little minigame with him. The speedway levels are still as awesome as they always were, so it's nice to have more to do. As far as the bosses go, they're actually really well done. They're all at the perfect difficulty and are a lot of fun to learn their patterns, and they actually feel somewhat threatening because they just tower over Spyro. The second and third bosses seem pretty menacing, but I gotta say, that third boss, man, he terrified the hell out of me when I was a kid, and I know I'm not the only one. And I might as well mention it, the skill points are back, and they're just as useless. Hooray! Now presentation-wise, there's not much to say here either, because again, it mostly follows the mold that Spyro 2 created. The game's still nice to look at, and we still have a really catchy soundtrack, although this time, Stuart Copeland was joined by another composer, Ryan Beveridge. I personally find it pretty easy to tell which song was composed by which composer, but that's honestly not a bad thing. The Copeland songs still sound very Spyro-y, and the Beveridge songs are a nice change of pace. It's funny, because the best song in the trilogy is done by Beveridge, Fireworks Factory. Man, this song is amazing. If you don't think so, you're wrong. It also helps that this plays in a level with freaking ninjas. Every argument you have is invalid. Here's where I feel like I'm gonna upset some people because I do have some negatives. For one, I don't like how they took out the cutscenes before and after levels. Yeah, it is a minor thing, but those cutscenes are pretty awesome in Spyro 2, so why take them out? Also, it was complete overkill to have 5 extra playable characters. Insomniac did state that they found it hard to keep Spyro himself interesting, mostly because he didn't have hands to hold anything, which is fine, but 5 characters? They aren't awful, except for, Bentley, but none of them are as enjoyable as Spyro is. I like having the extra variety, but only to an extent, and I feel like this game tried too much. Would have been better if they only did like 2 or 3 and focused on making them as fun as Spyro. And then there also are a few missions that I have to bring up, because oh man, they're awful. I'm only going to mention 3 in particular here. The tank battles in Haunted Tomb are a pain in the ass. Playing as Sergeant Bird against a barrage of cat witches is a pain in the ass. And then boxing with Bentley. Oh god, boxing with Bentley. I never thought I'd be so close to rage quitting in a classic Spyro game. By far the worst part of the entire Spyro trilogy. But hey, again, like the previous 2 games, you press a few buttons at the title screen and this time you're treated to a demo of Crash Bash. Yeah, it's not as awesome as Crash 3 or Team Racing, but hey, it still doesn't hurt. Spyro Year of the Dragon is a very interesting case. When it comes to the main Spyro gameplay, it's done just as well, if not better than Spyro 2. But all those extra characters, regardless of being good like Sheila or totally awful like Bentley, they just seem unnecessary. That being said, the game is still a lot of fun, so if you enjoyed Spyro 2 and the way that game was set out, there's no doubt you'll like this one too, just aside from a few iffy parts. I do see why people love this one so much, but as you can probably guess, I do prefer Spyro 2, but I would definitely put this one over Spyro 1. So there you go, I ranked all 3 for you right now. Don't bother asking me. I can tell this might start some controversy in the comments, so I'll just cut to the chase and give Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon a 4 out of 5. So there we have it. I've gone through the entire Spyro trilogy, and as many other people would consider, the only Spyro games worth talking about, and it was a lot of fun to do so. But you all know the story here. The Spyro series certainly didn't die off, but it probably would have been better if it did. Insomniac foolishly got rid of the licensing to Spyro and moved on to Ratchet & Clank. So now Spyro was, for lack of a better word, being whored out in every possible way. Games like Enter the Dragonfly and Hero's Tale, trying to replicate and quote-unquote improve on the original formula but fail considerably. Seasons of Ice and Seasons of Flame, crappy isometric games for the GBA, also trying to work off the original formula and fail considerably. And then games like Shadow Legacy and the Legend of Spyro trilogy, which are a literal joke and an insult to the originals, because hey, you know what the original Spyro trilogy was missing? Elijah Wood voicing Spyro and David Spade voicing Sparks. Great, awesome, 6 out of 5. I mention all this now because there's no way I'm torturing myself with these games for you guys. If you enjoyed them, go crazy, but I'm staying pure and not going past this trilogy. Now, if Insomniac were to repurchase the license and remake the games for, say, the PS3, that would be easy money from me, and I'm sure a lot of people would follow. But we all know that's never gonna happen, but damn wouldn't it be cool. But alright, that's it for my little soapbox, it's time to head off. Thank you guys for watching, hopefully you enjoyed, and as always, catch you later.